Okay, so along with Parshas Acharei Mos, in chapter 16, verse 4, we read the pasuk yesterday, and we read the first Rashi that the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur does not wear the golden garments, which he typically wears, but he wears white garments, and the reasoning is in Kateger Nasa Seneger. By the way, Eitan, did you have a good time at the Seder?
I did, yeah.
Good, Baruch Hashem. So then it says in the pasuk, Big Day Kodesh Haim. It says, Ksonis Bakodesh Yobash. She's going to wear holy garments. So Rashi says, Shiyahe Mishal Hektish, that the garments that the Kohen Gadol wears are going to be belonging to the Kohen, to the temple. He doesn't himself own them. If the Kohen Gadol, so the garments were owned by the temple, let's say the Kohen Gadol wanted more expensive garments, he was allowed to make his own donation just so that he could, to the temple, so that the temple could buy more expensive garments. Yitznof, that he'll use the b'mitznefes bad yitznof. What does that mean? Ketar gumo, yachet beresha, yaniach berosho, he shall place on his head, as it states, vatanach bigdo, va'achit chay, va'achit tetei. He shall put his garment. V'rachatz b'mayim, he shall immerse himself in the water. Rashi says, on that day, Oto Ayom, Ta'un Tevila B'chol Chalifotav. Every time the Kohen Gadol changed his clothing, he had to first immerse in the mikvah. Chamesh Pamim Hayam Machlif. He would change his clothing 5 times. Me'avodas Penim Hayam Machlif. Me'avodas Penim Avodas Chutz. When he went from the service in the inside, from in the service in the Holy of Holies to serving outside, he would change his garments first, and when he went from outside to inside, he would also change his garments. Big day zav, big day lavan, big day lavan, big day zav. He so basically started off wearing the golden garments. Then he went to the Holy of Holies. He wore the white garments. Then he went back outside and he put on the golden garments. Then he went back into the Holy of Holies and put on the white garments. And then he finished the day in the golden garments. Ubekol chalifa. Oh, thank you. Wow. He's in catering. He's in food service now, guy. Yes, shekoach. Beautiful. So, thank you, guy. So each time before he would do this, he would require tevila. He would require immersion. We're going to doing guy. Get the chumah. And before each time he changes clothing, he would require immersion. And also, the other thing he would do is, before he removed the garments and after putting on the new ones, he washed his hands and his legs. That's called kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. He would wash his hands and his legs. So he would require a total of 10 times he would wash his hands and his legs. 5 times he would immerse in the mikvah, and he would put on the priestly clothing 5 separate times. They put on the chapter 16, verse 4. So that's how we get to that total. So he did a lot of immersions in the mikvah. Yeah, there were mikvot on the Temple Mount. They had mikvah right there, which he would immerse in. And the Talmud, the Mishnah says that the first time before he immersed, he would immerse for the very first time right outside the temple, but on the Temple Mount itself, he would immerse, and they would put up a sheet to block him, give him privacy, so that nobody else would see him immersing.
So you can change 5 times
on Yom Kippur. He started off in the morning by immersing and putting on the golden garments. And before he put it on, he would wash his hands and his legs. And when he took off his previous garments, he'd wash his hands and legs, and then he would immerse. Okay. verse. I did go downtown today to see the pro Hamas encampment at GW. I saw there. I was walking around in my Bekisha. I got a lot of attention from them. They were following me around with video cameras everywhere, with phones everywhere I went. No, I'm not on the news.
Was there a pro-Israel?
There was also a pro-Israel demonstration, which I went to also, a very moving speech from one of the relatives of the hostages. Incredibly moving speech, very powerful and moving. Yeah. There was a sizable crowd, yeah. I mean, I think it was around the same number as the Palestinian pro-Hamas group, but the pro-Hamas group was banging drums and covering their faces, so they made it look more wild, whereas the Jewish group was not masked, and they were actually trying to explain the issues instead of just chanting slogans. Yes, Jerry, you had a question.
Yes. Did the Kohen have a butler to help him with these 5 garment changes?
No, nobody helped him. He had to do it himself. I mean, that's a good question. It did not say in the Talmud that somebody assisted him, and it didn't say that somebody did not assist him. So presumably, I assume if the Kohen was not fit enough to get himself dressed, he certainly wasn't going to be fit enough to do the service in the temple that day, which required him to be slaughtering animals, which is a somewhat dangerous job, and required him to be carrying parts of the animal, and to be carrying the hot coals, and to be running. It says he ran. So if he can't dress himself, he probably wasn't fit enough to do all the service that day.
Good point. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so also the water, I assume, was not heated. I think it says that somewhere. So he went into freezing cold water. So he went to freezing cold water. And the floors of the temple were stoned, and they were freezing because he couldn't wear shoes. So he did the whole thing. He did the whole service that day. And it starts off as follows. And from the assembly of the congregation, he will take 2 goats for a sin offering. We'll learn more about those. And 1 ram for an oil offering. And Aaron brought his own bull as a sin offering. And that served as an atonement for him and his household. Let's see what Rashi says. Rashi says, this is the one Hamur that's mentioned above. What does it mean it was his? It means he had to pay for it. It came from his own funds, not from the communal funds. The Kohen Gadol had to be very wealthy. How do we know he had to be wealthy? Because every day he had to bring a sacrifice, minchas chavitim. So he had to be very wealthy, the Talmud says. Otherwise, he couldn't be the high priest. So they wanted somebody, not to say that if you're rich, it means you're better, but they wanted somebody who was honored by the community. And so they honored people. Every society is usually honored people who are wealthy, better or for worse. Yes, Jerry, you had another question. Yes.
Yes, since the Kohanim didn't have any land, how did this Kohen Gadol get his money?
It's an excellent question that Jerry asks. Since the Kohen did not have any land, how did he have money? Well, he might have had money in a couple of ways. One, there's the old saying, beg, borrow, and steal. So he might have had it through, for a while, the Kohanim were fraudulent. But okay, so let's say that, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He could have married. We have examples in the Talmud of Kohanim who married into wealthy families. He could have made money in business. He didn't have land, but he could have been on the diamonds market, in jewels and trading. So he didn't have land, but there was other ways.
He had a side gig.
He might have had a side gig. Somehow, it's like the political figures. They're not allowed to work, and they go and they make a very limited amount of government salary, and then somehow they retire as mega millionaires, right? You ever notice that?
Yes.
Somehow they find it. The money shows up. We don't know from where.
Well, they have inside information from these
Yeah.
various.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly how the Kohen made his money, but he had to be wealthy.
Okay.
So then it states, "V'chiper ba'ado ba'beso." That's why he has to do an atonement offering. He has to atone for himself and for his household. Rashi says, "Mitvadeh alav avonoto v'avonot beito." He does an atonement for it for his own household and the household of for his own sins and the sins of his household. Hello there, Moshe. How are you? Okay. We're on Pasuk Zayin. And now the Kohen takes 2 goats. Hello, Thera. Good. Baruch Hashem. How was your Pesach, Thera? Beautiful. How was the matzah Shepsel baked? Did it make a big hit, Shepsel? Hopefully you had a story at the Seder to share about the matzah.
Yeah, we did. He was very modest. He didn't say anything.
We had was a lot of the comments that you had made for the weeks leading up to the Seder.
Oh, beautiful. He's so sweet. You're so sweet. What a sweetheart. Thank you, Chef. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. That's very sweet of you. Too kind. Okay, so we're in chapter 16, verse 7. So you take the 2 goats and you stand them before God at the entrance to the Ol Moed. These are the 2 goats that we're going to hear a lot about, Moshe. We're going to hear a lot about these 2 goats. Vinatan Aaron al Shnei Asirim Yoralot, and Aaron will place on the 2 goats lots. Lots. You know what a lot is? Well, you ever hear of a lottery?
Oh, yeah.
So the today a lottery comes basically you're just like scratching numbers. But originally a lottery was from here that you would have like a piece of wood or some other type of thing. Now it'll be called a lot, and you draw lots to see which one you're picking.
The Steinsold says the temple there originally fashioned from wood and later from gold.
Wood and then gold. All right, Shkoyach, who's here, my friend?
Somebody from Ellie from New York.
Ellie from New York. Shkoyach, we're drafting you to the Yeshiva Sinach basketball team. You got the height.
We still got the
You got it. You got it.
good range, you know?
No. We only go from deep range.
Deeper. Yeah.
All righty, Shikoyach. So, Ellie, where in New York are you living?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn?
Where in Brooklyn?
Off by East 15th Street.
Okay. That's I used to live there. Baruch Hashem. Okay, so then the pasuk tells us that he takes the 2 lots, he puts on the goats 2 lots. Goral achad Hashem. One lot is going to say for God, the goral achad Azazel, and the other lot says for Azazel. What does the word Azazel mean? In modern Hebrew, it's a curse word. You ever notice that? Modern Hebrew, you ever hear the word Azazel? I don't know if they use it in modern slang, but when you used to watch, when I was young, I would go to Israel and I would watch the TV, and I would always look to see how they translate certain words, and they would always say, like, go to Azazel. Oh, yeah. So, but it's a biblical word. It means here, we'll see what it means. According to Rashi, it's actually a very complicated word that there's a lot of debate as to its actual meaning. So what does Rashi say this word is? V'nasan Aaron al shnei asirim goralot. Rashi says, Mamid echad liyamin. He will put 1 goat on his right. The echad was small, and he put another goat on the left. V'nosin shtei yadav b'kalpi, and he would put the two hands into the box which has the lots. V'noto goral b'yamin v'chavero b'smol, and he would draw a lot in the right hand and the other one in the left hand. V'nosin aleihem, and he would put the lots on the goat. So basically, let's say there's a box, he'd stick his hand in, put one lot on one goat, one lot on the other goat. Either way, the goat is going to lose, by the way. So, Eshe Kasuv Bo Hashem, the goat that says for the name on it, Hu Hashem, that's a goat that was brought in the temple, as a sin offering. The Eshe Katuv Bo Azazel, and the goat that was written on it for Azazel, that was Mishtalech Azazel, that was sent out to Azazel. Where is Azazel? Where is this mountain of Azazel? Or you'll see what Azazel is. Rashi says, what's Azazel? Uhar az v'kasheh. It's a very like sharp and harsh mountain. So that's what Azazel, according to Rashi's. Other commentaries say Azazel is like the name of a demon, but it's Tzuk Kavoa. Rashi says it's a high cliff, as it states, Eretz Gezerah Chatucha. So presumably they would send this goat out, the Mishnah says, all the way out to the cliff, and then the goat would go off the side of the cliff. And the goat had a string on it, and if the string turned white, it means the Jewish people were forgiven for their sins. But how are you going to know? You have to go check it at the bottom after the goat fell off the high cliff. But does anybody know where this high cliff was that they pushed the goat off of? There's a lot of debate about this, but Hal Brodsky of blessed memory, our dear friend, he was a professor of biblical geography. He says, no way, there's no way to figure out which high cliff it was. He says, no, impossible. And that was how. He says, you can't figure it out because it says it was 10 mil, but how are you going to figure it out? Not possible. He said it's impossible to determine where this mountain that they threw the goat off was.
Take the map.
No, he said they had no way of determining the miles, what type of miles they were. Their topography was slightly different. He says impossible to figure it out. You could Google yourself. Can you figure out where Azazel is, the mountain of Azazel? He was convinced it's impossible. But when we went to Israel with Rabbi Borer of blessed memory, he was absolutely convinced that this is the mountain of Azazel.
What about Har Sinai?
Har Sinai, we know where it is.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I went to it.
We know 100%, like that's Har Sinai?
I would say it's not 100%.
80%.
I would say it's like 99.9999%.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. Har Sinai is almost certainly in what's today's Saudi Arabia, and it's one of two or three possible.
Sinai.
No, definitely not the Sinai. It's one of two or three possible mountains, and so we went to all three in Saudi Arabia, and I feel deep in my kishkas that was Mount Sinai. I had a great time on that trip.
Was it a small amount?
I mean, I'm not the best person to ask that because I really can't determine like mountain size. I have a book there which we based it upon. It's called Journey to Sinai, and you could see all his calculations written by a rabbi. But I wouldn't say it's a tremendously tall mountain, and it's not like Mount Everest, or it's not like even Mount McKinley. It's something that would take you like to climb to the peak would probably take you like 12 hours of climbing. So it's not like Mount Everest where you have to climb 3 weeks to get to the top or something, right? So it's relatively, it seemed to me like it was relatively similar in sizes to all the other mountains I went to, a little bit bigger than Masada. Okay. I did not climb it. I just went up like around 100 feet with a donkey, and then we rode the Torah there on a table, and it was very windy, but I did write the Torah, and actually that Torah I'm about to finish. Yeah. Okay. So now we go on. So those are the goats. So one goat was for God, and the other goat was for Azazel. It says the pasuk, "V'kriv Aaron et ha'sa'ir asher alo alav hagoro Hashem," and Aaron brought the goat that had a lottery that said for God. Aaron brought that goat. Aaron brought that goat, the goat that said for God, and he made it a sin offering. Rashi says, "Kisheminiach hagorol alav koralo shem v'omer Hashem chatas." When he put the lot on it, he called it a name, and he says to Hashem a sin offering. So, it's, by the way, it's such a powerful idea. I mean, it seems so obvious to me. But it's probably obvious to you as well. Just to point out that on Yom Kippur, which is supposed to be a day of tremendous repentance and introspection, we're talking about lotteries and about how so much is determined by lots. Of all the days where we would think that we would say there's no lots, this is a random selection. Of course, in the Torah, we don't think that lots are random. Hello, Elon. Welcome. Yeah, we're learning the Chumash. But we're all on a diet today because we had no bagels this morning. You got the Chumash, Elon? Okay. So now we say, yeah, so Vasair Asher Alav Hagorah, and the goat which has the lot on it, Azazel, the goat that says, the lot that says to Azazel, Yamod Chai, should stand alive before God, to atone for it, V'shalech oto la'Azazel Hamidbara, to send it out to Azazel, to the wilderness. So who is it atoning for? This goat, it says, will stand alive, the chaper alav. What's it go? What does that mean? Rashi says, Ma Talmud Lomar. Why does the Torah say it shall stand alive? Of course it's standing alive. Because it says, L'shalech oto azazel, ve'ini yodea shilucho im l'mita im l'chayim. Therefore it says, Yamod chai, amidato chai ad sheyishtalech. Mikan sheshlucho l'mita. Rashi says, the reason why it says it's standing alive, is because it's telling us that when it's sent out, it will die. It's standing alive right now, but it will be sent out. And when it's sent out, it will be sent out to death. That's what Rashi says is the implication. And l'chaper, what does it mean to atone? Sheyitvadelav, the Kohen Gadol will confess the sins upon this goat. As it says, vitvadelav. Now, whose sins are confessed upon this goat? The goat that's sent out to Azazel. Whose sins?
Bnei Israel.
Very good, Akiva. Excellent answer. The children of Israel's sins are confessed upon this goat. It's hard for us to imagine today. How can you just achieve atonement by sending everyone's sins onto a goat? It seems, and the Rambam talks about how the goat achieves forgiveness for certain sins, even if people don't repent at all. How can that work? Yes, Rebbe Lan.
Is this where the Christians got the idea of Shashki dying for sins? Like the goat dying for sins? It's kind of similar to that.
The idea of sacrifice. This is the idea of a sacrifice is just somebody, an animal dying for all of our sins. So they basically, I guess, and I know almost nothing about Christianity. I know nothing about Islam, Christianity. I usually don't like to talk about other faiths because I barely know about our faith. But I would assume that the idea of a sacrifice is built into many different passages in the Torah, and the idea of a tzaddik suffering. I mean, these are not ideas that are foreign to us. The idea of a tzaddik suffering or a tzaddik having to die for others to be forgiven. This is not a foreign idea. It's just they took it to a different place, a different level. So I don't know. We'd have to explore it. There's a lot of, what people say that a lot of ideas from the Christian Bible were lifted from the Hebrew Bible. Today I went to take my son to the DMV, And I was reading the Gemara while I was waiting for him.
So
What?
we're the only one leaving the Gemara.
Well, so the policeman who was there said to me, "What are you reading?" I said, "I'm reading the Talmud." He said, "What's that?" He said, "Is that like the Bible?" I said, "It's like the Hebrew Bible." And I said, "But it's not exactly the Bible." I mean, I don't know why it was. He had never he had no real concept of it at all. But then he said to me, "Does it have Jesus in it?" And I said, "No, there's no Jesus in it." And he said, "Why not?" I said, "It's just we're not discussing it. We're on a different conversation." But he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that we weren't discussing why, in his understanding of it, if Jesus was such a blessing to the world, why would we not be discussing it?
Have that conversation with random people on the street like once every month, they come up to me and ask for that.
So I said to him, "Well, does Muhammad appear in the Christian Bible? I mean, are you reading about Muhammad? No, you have to study your faith. I have to study mine. The Muslims should study theirs and do the best we can with our own faith before we start trying to say what does our faith say about this or that." So anyway, at the end, he then asked me if we're the religion that prays to like a little idol with crazy eyes. I said, "That's not us either." But at the end of the day, if you're going to take one lesson from me, from all my teachings, never argue with a man with a gun. He had the gun and I didn't. All right, let us daven mincha. I also want to say that we have a